Northern province of Cabo, Delgado in Mozambique has been plagued by violence from militant attacks with links to the Islamic State. Now, reports in August suggest that the port of Mocimboa da Praia in Mozambique's Cabo Delgado was captured by these militants, and the extremists have so far managed to hold the port city, signaling that national government may have lost control over the conflict in its resource-rich north that began with a few attacks in 2017. Senior researcher at the Institute for Security Studies, Martin Iwi, joins me now to talk about the seriousness of the threat to Southern Africa. Martin, good evening and thank you very much for your time. How serious is the threat of Islamic State in Mozambique, but also going further in attacking South Africa?
As you know, this insurgency in northern Mozambique has been there since 2017. What we have witnessed in the past 3 years has been an increasing violence to the extent that what we have now threatens the whole region, not only Mozambique alone. And this was confirmed actually last week when the Islamists carried out attacks in Tanzania, in the southern town of Mtwara of Tanzania, where they attacked multiple places. So we don't know which country is going to be next, but we know that the rest of the region is threatened by these militants, whom we know have sleeper cells in most of the countries around.
Is there a counter-terrorism strategy in place, particularly on the part of the Mozambique military?
Well, you can always say, you know, the actions of the government are based on some sort of a strategy. But what we have seen so far is that this strategy is not working. The insurgents are gaining grounds. As you mentioned in your introduction, in August, they captured Mocimboa da Praia. They captured also the port, which is a very strategic city, and a strategic port, which is the main port in that region that brings in a lot of goods from the sea. So it has been a major trade route, but also that port is known for drug trafficking. So if it is being controlled by the insurgents, you can imagine what is going on there and what kind of trade they are controlling. So we are extremely concerned that the level of the insurgency has reached the point that I think the rest of the region need to take seriously. We believe that the Southern African Development Community, SADEK, should do something to bring the insurgency under control.
Are you saying the Mozambique military is now at a point where it is powerless? For example, in one of the battles at the Mocimboa da Praia, it is reported or alleged that the military actually ran out of ammunition. And are these confirmed facts, or are these just simply reports?
Well, what we know so far is that at some point the military has been overpowered by the insurgents, which is how they were able to capture the town of Mocimboa da Praia. They were able to capture the port of Mocimboa da Praia. Now, in so many instances, the government tried to take back this town, but was met with heavier insurgent strength. And therefore, we know that the government alone, Mozambique alone, cannot defeat this insurgency. This insurgency has regional roots. You know, they are all over the region. And if you look at the cross-border trafficking of goods and services, it's just amazing. It's too much. So we believe that if we want to bring this insurgency under control, it has to go beyond what Mozambique alone can do.
Now you've got this 16-member regional organization called SADEK. Are they concerned about the violence that is increasing in Mozambique and the potential of that violence spreading to other countries?
Well, we can say so far, yes, to some extent. You know, in May, SADC held its first summit on the matter. It was the summit of the organ on politics, defense, and security. which is an organ of SADC, the organ concerned with peace and security. So they held that summit in May this year, but were not able to come out with any conclusive way forward or conclusive roadmap in terms of how SADC was going to be involved in bringing this insurgency under control. And in August, SADC held its regular summit where the leaders expressed concern over this insurgency and actually committed to helping Mozambique deal with the insurgency effectively. But we have not seen any concrete action from SADC since that summit. But what we hear is that SADC has been waiting for Mozambique to come forward with what they call a roadmap for SADC involvement, where Mozambique can actually point out which areas and what kind of support it requires from SADC. That has not happened. Yes. And yet the insurgency is growing day by day, to the extent that as we sleep, each day that passes, this insurgent gain more grounds, this insurgent gain more strength. So the more we allow them to grow, the more difficult it will be when we finally decide to deal with them. So I think we should do something right now if we want to bring this insurgency under control, because the way it is growing day by day and the humanitarian catastrophe that is unfolding in northern Mozambique is just to the extent that I don't know how we can be sleeping at night knowing that this kind of mayhem is going on in that part of the country. If you look at Mocimboa da Praia, which is the most affected town in Cabo Delgado, there are barely people there. So the insurgents have driven out the locals. They've taken over their homes and used these homes for the insurgency. So do we want this insurgent to control Mocimboa da Praia, where they will amass resources? They will be able to purchase sophisticated weapons. Look, if this happens, then we should have ourselves to blame if we are not able to deal with the insurgency at the time that we want to deal with them. So I believe that we should be acting with urgency in terms of responding to what's happening in northern Mozambique, because each country in the region, especially those countries that are bordering Mozambique, I think they face a greater threat from this insurgency.
What is the motive of the militia? Why, for example, are they taking over that part of Mozambique?
No, thank you for that, because I think you mentioned in your introduction also that the Islamic State has become involved. Yes, when it started in 2017, it looked like a local insurgency, where some Islamists took up arms against the government, complaining of marginalization, complaining of poverty, and also what we saw were grievances against the government for the way the government managed the rubies, that were discovered, for the way the government managed the gas reserve that have been discovered. They brought in companies from outside. These companies started recruiting people from outside rather than from a region which has suffered a lot from poverty. So the youth from Cabo Delgado started reacting, to this. That, look, we thought the gas is discovered in this region. We at least the resources should be used, to alleviate poverty from this region. But yet we are seeing foreigners coming in to take over. This is something that is not acceptable. Yeah. But I mean, this is what we assume, because the insurgent never really come forward, to explain what were their reasons. Earlier this year, the Islamic State stated that it is fighting to implement Sharia and to overthrow the government of Mozambique. But we know this is not the original reason for the insurgency, that it is really because of the unemployment, the mass unemployment of youth in Cabo Delgado, the poverty that has stricken every place, low literacy rate in the region. So I think that, we still need the insurgent to tell us, what is it that they are fighting for, and how can we go about dealing with that. But we know from experiences in other regions of Africa. If you were to look at the Sahel in West Africa, or you were to look at the Lake Chad Basin region, where Boko Haram has been causing havoc for so many years, these insurgents actually have their own agenda, and we know that agenda is always to take over the whole region, to spread Sharia and control, illicit trafficking, control all sort of organized crime in that region, where they exploit a lot of resources from them. So we don't expect to hear from the insurgent, but we know that from similar experiences around the continent, poverty is always at the root of this. Unemployment of youth, underdevelopment, these are factors that often create grievances. And in the case of Mozambique, we know that the way the natural resources that have recently been discovered, the way they have been managed, has not been to the benefit of the youth in the region. And therefore, you can expect this kind of grievances to escalate. But what is critical now is that if it were in 2017, a local insurgency where people were complaining about the mismanagement of the natural resources, the implication of the Islamic State since 2019 has actually changed the dynamics of the insurgency in northern Mozambique. Remember, the Islamic State is a global terrorist organization. When they come in with resources from all over. When they come in with foreign fighters, fighters that are coming from all over the world. And if this continues, this trend that we are talking about continues to grow in Mozambique, it's going to reach a point where Mozambique is going to be declared a caliphate, which will attract again foreign fighters from all over, and it will make it extremely difficult for the region or even for the world to be able to deal with it. Look at Al-Shabaab in Somalia. The African Union forces have been there for how many years and have still not been able to root out Al-Shabaab. This kind of phenomenon is developing in Mozambique, and we hope that the region can react sooner or later.
Yeah. Now, while, of course, since April, Mozambique realizes that it is becoming overpowered by these extremist Islamist groups, what sort of capacity do we have in the region as far as security is concerned, but also other required interventions to combat extremism in the region?
Yeah, I think the misunderstanding when we say regional intervention, I think the moment we say intervention, everyone thinks about a military. Insurgency of this nature are not only fought with the military, and the military, for me, it's part of it's a small part of a bigger strategy. Yes, there will be a military requirement, but I think that if you were to look at some of the circumstances in northern Mozambique, you will see that you need humanitarian intervention. You need, first of all, to reassure the people that we care about them, so that we can overturn their grievances and win hearts and minds, because the insurgent, they deal with local support. No insurgency has ever succeeded without local support. If we isolate these groups, they will not be able to get the strength that they are getting now, because what is happening now is that they are winning hearts and minds. The people see them, more. The people are more close to the insurgent than to the government, which is worrying, and we don't want that to happen, because it means that the people can provide can provide security, actually can protect the insurgents, than they will protect the government, which means that the insurgent can also use the people as a shield, human shield, to protect themselves against the government. We've seen that in quite a number of cases where the government will come in to strike, and the people will be the one to take the bullet, which has been very, very unfortunate. So what we think, your question about resources, I think that yes, if the whole region can pull together, political resources, which means that we look for ways to dialogue with the insurgents. We look for political power. We look for development. We know that there are foreign companies there that are exploiting the resources. You request this company to contribute to the development of the region. Request these companies to contribute to employment of youth in the region. request this company to provide something on the ground that will make that these people could feel that, yes, these resources are discovered here,
right,
and we are also benefiting from it. If it doesn't happen, if this does not happen, if we go with the capitalist approach that is unfolding, where foreign companies just come and exploit and send the capital elsewhere rather than spending in the region, we're going to see the kind of situation that we've seen in the Niger Delta region of Nigeria, where locals, pick up arms against the government to protest against the oil exploitation by foreign companies, which were doing absolutely nothing to improve the environment, doing absolutely nothing to develop the region, doing absolutely nothing to bring basic necessities to the people on the ground. Whether you talk about water, you talk about electricity, all of these things people do not have, but yet they have resources that produce billions of dollars.
All right, Martin, I appreciate your time, and that's where we're going to have to leave it for tonight. I appreciate your time, Martin Ewi. He is the senior researcher at the Institute for Security Studies.